The first weapon changed everything, but not for the reasons most people think. The standard story goes something like this. Ancient humans invented weapons to hunt larger game, they secured more meat, and human civilization followed. Clean, logical, satisfying. The kind of narrative that fits neatly into a single paragraph and requires no further examination, except the reality is considerably stranger, considerably more consequential, and involves a chain of evolutionary events so profound that weapons didn't just change how humans hunted, it changed what humans are. The shape of the social hierarchy, the structure of our brains, the reduction of physical dominance, the emergence of human morality, and the evolutionary trajectory of the entire species. All of it downstream of one ancient human deciding to sharpen a stone and throw it. Let's go through how this actually happened and why it matters far more than the standard story suggests. Start with the question that almost never gets asked. Before weapons, how did humans manage conflict and power within their groups? The pre-weapon human social life was raw, brutal, and entirely dictated by physical mass. The specific composition of that primitive society posed challenges that are crucial to understand before you can appreciate what weapons solved. Ancient pre-weapon hominins lived in hierarchies identical to modern chimpanzees. Power belonged exclusively to the physically massive, the aggressive, and the terrifying. And here is the thing that sets the stage for everything that follows. That social structure required an enormous amount of physical intimidation and constant vigilance to maintain. Alpha males spent their entire lives enforcing compliance through raw brute force. A single individual could tyrannize an entire group simply because no one could match his physical strength in a face-to-face fight. This is the baseline cost of being a large primate in a world where force is bounded by muscle mass. The weak cowered, the strong dominated, and the hierarchy held. Human ancestors faced this exact constraint for millions of years. Before the first projectile, before the spear, the human ancestor was trapped in a cycle of physical tyranny. The physical adaptations to support this brutal lifestyle were evident in early hominin anatomy. Skulls from that era show massive brow ridges and thick bones designed to absorb heavy impacts from physical combat. The canine teeth were sharp, functioning as dangerous weapons for internal group warfare. The upper body musculature was heavy and metabolically expensive, optimized for close-quarters wrestling and tearing flesh. A large, aggressive body is expensive to maintain on the savanna. It consumes vast amounts of calories just to support the muscle mass needed to stay at the top of the hierarchy. This is the volatile context into which the first true weapon arrived. The specific thing that a weapon does to the physics of combat is the key to understanding why its effects on human biology were so dramatic. A weapon does several things to a conflict simultaneously. It externalizes lethal force, extending the reach of an individual far beyond their physical arm span. It amplifies kinetic energy, allowing a small stone or a sharp stick to inflict catastrophic damage that muscles alone could never achieve. It creates distance, reducing the immediate risk of counterattack from a larger opponent. And most importantly, it equalizes the playing field completely. The result of these physical changes is that a weapon decouples lethality from physical size. Anthropologists note that a thrown projectile eliminates the advantage of raw muscle mass in a fight. A sharp spear thrown from the shadows kills a massive alpha male just as easily as it kills a weak juvenile. The human species suddenly stumbled upon a technological equalizer that bypassed millions of years of genetic evolution. The body no longer needed to invest massive energy into growing gigantic muscles or dangerous canine teeth for internal defense. This is the first and most immediate consequence of weapons, the democratization of lethal force. But the downstream effects of that single change are what made weapons so profoundly consequential for our species. More equality through distributed lethality meant the alpha system had to collapse. If a tyrant could be assassinated in his sleep or struck from a distance, absolute physical dominance became a massive liability. The aggressive bullying behaviors that once guaranteed reproductive success suddenly guaranteed an early death. The social landscape underwent a radical, violent inversion. Power shifted away from the single strongest individual and toward the group. Let's trace this shift through a specific individual named Aru to see how it played out on the ground. Aru was a slender hominin, physically outmatched by the dominant males of his troop. He walked across the dry, cracked earth of the East African Rift Valley. The landscape was a desolate expanse of yellow grass under a searing, white-hot sun. In the distance, a solitary acacia tree cast a long, thin shadow over the dust. The dominant alpha male stood over the carcass of a scavenged antelope, roaring fiercely. His massive chest heaved, and his thick arms rippled with raw, intimidating power. Other members of the group sat tensely in the dirt, waiting for the scraps left behind. Aro held a long piece of wood, its tip hardened in the embers of a dying hearth. The weight of the wooden shaft felt balanced and solid in his calloused palms. He did not approach the alpha male directly to challenge him. Instead, he stood several paces back, adjusting his grip on the smooth wood. The wind swept through the tall grass, creating a low, rushing sound across the plain. The alpha looked up, his dark eyes narrowing as he spotted the slender challenger. He bared his large teeth and took a heavy step forward to reassert his absolute authority. Aro drew his arm back, shifting his weight onto his rear foot. With a sudden explosive motion, he hurled the wooden spear straight forward. The weapon pierced the air, with a faint hiss, flying across the intervening space. The pointed tip struck the center of the alpha's massive chest with devastating impact. The giant stumbled backward, his hands grasping at the wooden shaft in sheer disbelief. The roar died in his throat, replaced by a wet, choking gasp as he collapsed into the dust. The rest of the troop remained utterly frozen, their wide eyes darting between the fallen leader and the slender hunter. The old rule of muscle mass had vanished in a fraction of a second. A new era of human interaction had just begun on the savannah. The silence that followed was the birth of an entirely different kind of society. The evolutionary timing of this transition is etched deeply into the fossil record. The genus Homo began to exhibit significant anatomical changes around 2 million years ago. Skulls belonging to Homo erectus show a remarkable reduction in jaw robusticity and face size. The massive bony crests that anchored violent jaw muscles began to disappear entirely. At the exact same time, brain size in the human lineage began its dramatic, exponential expansion. The expensive tissue hypothesis suggests that shrinking one system frees up energy for another. In this case, the reduction of heavy defensive bone and muscle mass financed the growth of the brain. The brain got bigger as the physical machinery of raw violence shrank. This biological shift co-occurred precisely with the appearance of the first complex stone tools and throwing weapons. The coincidence of these changes is a powerful testament to the impact of technology on anatomy. Weapons did not just protect the brain, they made physical space for it to expand within the skull. A smaller face and a lighter jaw allowed the brain case to dome upward and outward. The physical structure of the human head was literally reshaped by the externalization of force. Your flat face and delicate jaw exist because your ancestors chose stones over brute muscles. The alternative face, the pre-weapon face, was a heavy mask designed for raw physical dominance. Now let's talk about the psychological consequences, because this is where the story becomes truly profound. In a world where anyone can kill anyone with a weapon, cooperation becomes a matter of life and death. You could no longer afford to be a lone tyrant who alienated everyone else in the group. A single resentful individual with a sharp stone could end your genetic lineage in the middle of the night. Therefore, early humans had to develop an entirely new set of psychological adaptations. They had to learn how to manage their impulses, suppress raw aggression, and build trust. The human brain evolved specialized neural circuitry for emotional regulation and social negotiation. We became a self-domesticating species, systematically weeding out the hyper-aggressive individuals from our gene pool. The execution of bullies became the primary mechanism for maintaining group harmony. Coalitions of weaker individuals used weapons to police the behavior of would-be tyrants. This collective enforcement gave birth to the very concept of human morality and justice. Right and wrong were no longer defined by what the strongest male wanted. They were defined by the consensus of the weapon-bearing community. Let's look closely at how this reshaped the daily life of our ancestor Aru. Aru walked through a dense thicket of thorny bushes, searching for tracks. The ground was covered in dry leaves that crackled softly beneath his feet. Beside him walked two other hunters, their movements perfectly synchronized and silent. Each man carried a bundle of sharpened reeds tipped with chipped flint. There was no single leader barking orders or dominating the path ahead. They communicated through subtle gestures, nods of the head, and low whispers. The forest opened up into a wide, marshy clearing bordered by tall reeds. A large herd of grazing animals moved slowly through the shallow water. The three hunters spread out, taking positions behind separate boulders. Aru raised his hand, signaling the moment to strike. Simultaneously, three projectiles tore through the air, finding their targets with lethal precision. The animals scattered in panic, leaving behind the chosen prey. The hunters approached the fallen animal together, their faces calm and cooperative. They did not fight over the meat or tear at it like wild beasts. Aru took a sharp obsidian flake and carefully began to divide the carcass into equal portions. The other two men watched closely, ensuring the distribution was fair and just. This simple act of sharing was a radical departure from the primate baseline. It was made possible only because each man carried the means to enforce fairness on his hip. The weapon in the hand demanded respect and equity from the neighbor. Without the threat of mutual lethality, the meat would have belonged solely to the strongest. With it, the meat became a shared resource that bonded the community together. This dynamic created a unique evolutionary paradox that defines humanity to this day. Our capacity for extreme violence is what allowed us to develop extreme cooperation. We are peaceful because we are lethal, not despite it. The distribution of weapons forced the evolution of egalitarianism. Let's look at another dimension of this technological shift that rarely gets discussed: the time budget. In a raw primate society, a massive amount of time is spent navigating social tension. Chimpanzees devote hours every day to grooming, political posturing, and status disputes. The constant threat of physical violence requires endless energy and mental focus to manage. Weapons streamlined this entire social process by establishing clear, enforceable boundaries. The daily time budget spent on physical intimidation dropped dramatically. Early humans suddenly found themselves with hours of free time every single day. What did they do with this newly liberated time? They invested it into the complex social activities that human culture depends upon. Aru sat by the edge of a deep cavern, the rock face cool against his back. The evening sky turned a deep, bruised purple as the sun dipped below the horizon. A small fire crackled in the center of the camp, casting long shadows on the stone walls. Aru held a piece of smooth bone, carefully drilling a hole through its center with a flint tool. Nearby, an older man was demonstrating the precise method for chipping stone to a young boy. The boy watched intently, copying the hand movements with a small river pebble. In the background, women were weaving fibers into strong cords for carrying tools. This extended teaching and cultural transmission required relaxed attention and long stretches of peace. It was a scene that would be impossible in a group dominated by a violent, erratic alpha male. The weapon standing against the cave wall acted as a silent guarantor of this domestic peace. The time savings from weapons operated at both ends of the human experience. Less time spent fighting meant more time available for thinking, creating, and bonding. This expanded time budget is precisely where language and complex storytelling could finally take root. The social consequences of weapons extended far beyond the immediate hunting grounds. They fundamentally restructured the human family unit and the nature of mating. In an alpha-dominated species, one giant male monopolizes all the females through force. Weapons shattered this monopoly completely by giving every male the power to resist. A weaker male with a weapon could defend his partner from the advances of a larger rival. This shift laid the groundwork for the pair bond that characterizes human reproduction. Mating became a matter of social negotiation and mutual choice rather than raw physical conquest. The family unit emerged as a stable structure for raising highly dependent, large-brained children. Let's observe Aru in this new social reality as the night deepens over the savannah. He walked to the edge of the firelight, where a woman was roasting tubers in the ashes. She looked up, her expression relaxed and trusting as he approached. Aru handed her a choice cut of lean venison from the afternoon hunt. She accepted it, offering him a warm, cooked root in return. They sat together in the dirt, their shoulders touching as they ate in quiet harmony. A few paces away, their young child slept soundly on a bed of soft grass. There was no fear of a dominant male rushing in to tear them apart or steal their meal. The social norms around the hearth protected their small cooperative partnership. These norms were built into the very architecture of the species at the same time weapons were. The anthropological argument is that weapons forced us to invent the concept of individual rights. The right to your food, the right to your partner, and the right to your life all began with the spear. Without the equalizer, rights could not exist. Only the will of the strongest would matter. Let's talk about the specific nature of human warfare, because this technology had a darker side. As weapons made internal peace possible, they made external conflict infinitely more lethal. The same tools that protected the troop from tyrants were turned against neighboring groups. The landscape between tribes became a zone of high-stakes, lethal competition. Intergroup violence was no longer a matter of screaming and chest-beating displays. It became a calculated affair of ambushes, raids, and tactical coordination. The human immune system and stress response evolved to handle this new reality. Hypervigilance, tribal loyalty, and fear of the outsider became hardwired into our psychology. We developed an intense capacity for in-group love combined with out-group hostility. This dual nature is the ultimate legacy of the weaponized mind. Let's see how Aru faced this darker aspect of his world. He stood on a high, rocky ridge, overlooking a dense valley forest. The dawnlight was a pale, cold blue creeping across the distant hills. Aru scanned the tree line below, his muscles tense, and his eyes alert. A flock of birds suddenly erupted from the canopy a mile away, screaming into the sky. This subtle disturbance indicated the presence of strange hunters entering his territory. Aru gripped his spear tightly, his heart hammering against his ribs in a surge of adrenaline. He did not run forward blindly or scream a challenge into the valley. He retreated slowly into the shadows of the rocks, blending seamlessly with the stone. He crept back to his camp to alert the others, moving like a ghost through the brush. Within minutes, a silent coalition of weapon-bearing men stood ready to defend their borders. They moved as a single organism, guided by tactical intelligence rather than raw rage. This capacity for large-scale warfare required a level of cooperation that no other primate could dream of. The weapon did not create the hatred, but it gave the hatred absolute lethality. It forced groups to become hyper-cohesive units just to survive the threat of their neighbors. The honest answer about the origin of human violence is that it is the flip side of our capacity for peace. We are the most cooperative species on Earth because we are the most dangerous when threatened. The ultimate equalizer shaped both our finest virtues and our deepest flaws. Ancient humans did not start making weapons because they were clever or because they planned these outcomes. The first instance was almost certainly born of simple utility. A sharper stone to cut meat faster. The discovery that throwing that stone could kill a predator or a rival came later. The intentionality emerged gradually, over thousands of generations of selection. Groups that weaponized effectively and enforced internal equality simply outcompeted those that did not. The consequences of that accidental technological leap are written into your daily life today. They are written into the size of your muscles and the shape of your face. They are written into the delicate bones of your jaw and the flat profile of your skull. They are written into the capacity for empathy that allows you to live peacefully in giant cities. They are written into the laws, the courts, and the systems of justice that govern modern societies. A modern courtroom is just a highly ritualized version of a weapon-bearing coalition policing a tyrant. The underlying biological logic remains completely unchanged after 2 million years. Weapons are not what humans do, weapons are part of what humans are. They are built into our anatomy, our metabolism, and our social architecture. The ancient human who threw the first projectile wasn't just defending himself, he was triggering a biological cascade that runs unbroken to this very moment. You are, in a very real sense, a weapon-shaped animal. Your brain expects a world where force is equalized by technology. Your sense of morality was forged by the threat of mutual lethality. Your capacity for deep, trusting love was financed by the elimination of the alpha male. The first equalizer changed everything. It took a wild, violent primate and forced it to become human. It reshaped the face, the mind, and the soul of our species. The weapon changed everything, but only because everything was already waiting to be changed. We are the children of the spear, forever balancing our peace on the edge of a blade.